Hey, welcome back everyone. We're again continuing these 5-day-a-week broadcasts focusing heavily on the coronavirus, the CCP virus. And of course, still here broadcasting from my apartment in Queens, New York. First off, we have new leaked documents from Harbin again, talking about the virus outbreak there, saying that the number of cases could be 200 times what the Chinese Communist Party has been saying. In addition to that, we got more leaked documents coming from the province where Harbin is, Heilongjiang Province, noting that they've sent armed forces, different people's armed police, to the China-Russia border to secure it. The YouTube CEO is now warning that they will remove content that goes against World Health Organization recommendations. Now, before we go on, folks, please remember to like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, click the notification bell. You get alerts when new videos are up. And apparently, if you have already subscribed, please double check that you're still subscribed, because we've been getting told that YouTube seems to be unsubscribing people. Now, first up, we have new leaked documents coming out of Harbin. So these new documents show that the virus outbreak in Harbin is a whole lot worse than the Chinese Communist Party has been reporting. The Epoch Times has received a few different rounds of leaked documents from there, and these ones show there are about 30 new cases being diagnosed a day. It says the number of diagnosed cases in Harbin is 10 times what the Chinese Communist Party is reporting. The number of patients overall is somewhere around 200 times the official data. So this is close to over 1,400 patients at Harbin designated hospitals. And this follows a leaked 4-page document from Heilongjiang Province warning local officials in Harbin that the situation there is out of control, quote unquote. And of course, local officials seem to be limiting reporting. One thing to note when it comes to the Chinese Communist Party and this virus outbreak: local officials want to look good for their higher-ups. And so they have it in their personal interest to not report cases, because when they report cases, it looks like they're not doing their jobs well. And of course, they get these warning letters like these officials in Harbin just received. And of course, we've had several reports on Harbin, notably that they have renewed lockdowns in Harbin. In other words, of course, the Chinese Communist Party began reopening China, and very soon after that they began locking down different areas yet again, Harbin being one of them. And again, notably, we're blacklisted in China. We can't get there. But we do have sources on the ground, and typically when people want to get information out of China, we tend to be the one of the few that they trust. And so we get a lot of leaked documents, we get a lot of exclusive interviews. So we did interview some citizens on the ground in Harbin, and they do not trust the Chinese Communist Party's data anymore as well. We also have photos showing large gatherings of people in the outdoor markets there, and so it does appear to be mixed. It seems people don't trust the local authorities. At the same time, they're not having any trouble gathering en masse in public. Now, in addition to this, we have other leaked documents showing that the Chinese Communist Party is deploying different security forces to the Chinese-Russian border in Heilongjiang Province, where Harbin is. When the Wuhan port was closed on April 7th, the Chinese Communist Party deployed not only just additional police, but also People's Armed Police Forces, which is a paramilitary organization, and border guards to prevent people from crossing the border from Russia. The leaked document we got is entitled, quote, "Working Measures on Further Strengthening the Administration of Supported Persons at Wuhan Port." Sorry for my poor pronunciation. It was issued on April 8th, in other words, one day after they closed the port, by Foreign Affairs Working Group of the Heilongjiang Provincial Headquarters, and again is in response to these concerns of new outbreaks, alleged new, but outbreaks regardless, happening in Heilongjiang Province. Now, the broader context of this is that Russia has been expatriating Chinese in Russia and is trying to send them back to China. The Chinese Communist Party will not take them back. And so you have these displaced persons, essentially, right on the border of China kind of caught in limbo between Russia and China. The Chinese Communist Party will not take them back. They've even come out and accused them of drug smuggling to try to justify their reasoning for not letting them come back into the mainland. And of course, the increased border security is coming amid rumors that people have been trying to sneak across the border through various means. And so the Chinese Communist Party is working very hard to keep its own people from re-entering China from Russia. Russia does not want them in their country either. And so it's a complicated situation. We'll keep an eye on this. Now, moving forward, kind of tying into this whole thing, the Chinese Communist Party seems to be becoming finally aware that the world is not believing their numbers. And so they're going to be conducting large-scale tests of people for the virus. Now, of course, it's very likely that the numbers they release will still not be the accurate numbers, just knowing how they typically operate. But at the very least, it's interesting that they seem to be becoming aware that the rest of the world no longer believes what they've been saying. Now, moving on, the YouTube CEO is warning that they will start removing content that goes against World Health Organization, WHO, recommendations. The YouTube CEO was speaking with CNN host Brian Stelter on his show Reliable Sources. And she said there's been a, quote, 75% increase in the news coming from authoritative sources since the beginning of 2020. And then she adds, quote, yes, and so we talk about that as raising authoritative information. But then we also talk about removing information that is problematic, you know? Of course, anything that is medically unsubstantiated. So people saying, like, take vitamin C, you know, take turmeric, those will cure you. Those are the examples of things that would be a violation of our policy. Anything that would go against the World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy. And so remove is another really important part of our policy. Now, it's possible that when she says anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy, and then states that, you know, in that case they might remove content, it is possible that she's speaking in context of these different alleged cures to the virus people are claiming. It is not totally clear, but when we look at the broader picture of what's happening right now, it does seem she's talking about World Health Organization guidance overall. We'll have to see how this unfolds, but let's tie this into the bigger picture. This comes after Facebook made similar statements. Now, NBC reported recently, quote, Facebook will steer users who interact with coronavirus misinformation to WHO. And of course, Facebook came out very recently and announced new policies on censoring content. Now, this also follows another issue where we had Nature magazine, the science journal, one of the ones that notably had linked this virus to China very early on, coming out and issuing a public statement apologizing for linking the virus to China because they said it could cause racism. But here's their reasoning on that. Now, they stated that they would follow the WHO naming conventions on the new coronavirus, the CCP virus, and they also stated in that letter, quote, as well as naming the illness, the WHO was implicitly sending a reminder to those who had erroneously been associating the virus with Wuhan and with China in their news coverage, including Nature. They're saying that it goes against WHO recommendations based on Nature magazine to associate this virus with China or Wuhan. And of course, this is very problematic given the fact that the international community right now is not just looking at China as the source of this and questioning them and launching investigations, but specifically looking into this virus lab in Wuhan. And of course, early on, even the Chinese Communist Party itself was calling this the Wuhan virus. They were referring to Wuhan as the origin of the virus. And now, on some deeper context to this, the WHO, in their strategy, which I mentioned in one of the previous episodes, their strategy includes actions against what they call the infodemic. So WHO has operations running 24/7, identifying what they regard as misinformation. And they are working with social media platforms, partnerships they mention actually in the document, including the major ones, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, to go after this content through various means. Now, back to YouTube, there does seem to be another concerning trend. There were a few different Chinese news outlets that were talking about this, namely in Taiwan. Radio Free Asia also had a story on it. They say that YouTube deleted an entire channel that had 170,000 followers after it published a video titled, quote, "The 7 Conspiracies Behind the CCP's Rapid Push of Digital Currency." So this is about digital currency, what the Chinese Communist Party is allegedly doing to it. The entire channel was deleted. Google claimed it was because of, quote, "commercial fraud, spam." And people, in the Chinese-speaking communities are questioning why this was done. What was the real reason? Now, on the issue of different nations holding the Chinese Communist Party accountable for its censorship, for its actions that allowed this virus to become a pandemic, different nations now seem to be rallying against the Chinese Communist Party and its, say, operations of foreign subversion. First off, Sweden is removing all Confucius Institutes in the country. Now, what are Confucius Institutes, for those who don't know? Basically, the Chinese Communist Party finances these different, say, classrooms or programs for universities and schools. They will often pay the universities to host these classes. They get free Chinese language classes out of it. But there have been a lot of reports that the Chinese Communist Party has been using these institutes as forms of, say, subverting these academic institutions. Great documentary on this, In the Name of Confucius. Highly recommend you check it out. And Spain is now sending back faulty coronavirus tests made in China, which had been sent out earlier to replace another batch of faulty tests. And so Spain, again, one of the countries that is really not doing so well with this virus, is getting hit pretty hard by it, was not able to use test kits because they found them to be faulty. For some reason went back to China to order a new batch, and the new batch is also faulty, and so they have to send them back yet again. Now, we mentioned in the previous episode, there's some weird business going on with these test kits. There was a federal investigation into some of the test kits the CDC was sending out in February, and found that their test kits were actually, they contained the virus. The test kits themselves were infected. And of course, there was another story pointing to the fact that the UK had another shipment of virus test kits that were found to contain the virus as well. Those kits were coming from a Luxembourg-based company, but you can trace these kits back to Shanghai, apparently. And of course, there's the bigger picture of these non-functional or problematic test kits coming out of China. And it's unclear whether now this is, when they talk about problematic test kits, does this mean they're infected? Does it mean they don't function? Does it mean they can't identify the virus? Now, Australia is calling for an international probe into the origins of this virus. And they've been having phone calls with global, national leaders, including President Trump, on this to get them behind it. And on the note of these calls for investigation, China just forbade France from sending safety experts to its Wuhan laboratory, where again most of the attention is being turned right now as a possible origin of this virus. Bloomberg News reported China's coronavirus diplomacy has finally pushed Europe too far. And it quotes the German Green Party lawyer who chairs the European Parliament's delegation for relations with China, saying, quote, "Over these months, China has lost Europe." India Today is reporting that, quote, 1,000 foreign firms mull production in India. And it says 300 actively pursue plan as, quote, exit China, mantra grows. And they're saying that 300 of these companies are actively pursuing this plan as they pull out of China. And notably as well, previously reported, Japan is even paying some firms to pull out of China. And back to the U.S. now, the Missouri government is bringing charges against the Chinese Communist Party in U.S. federal court. And there's something very interesting about this court case. Notably, they are suing the Chinese Communist Party as being the one responsible for this, not the state council which would be the technical Chinese government. And so they're going to force the Chinese Communist Party into an interesting position. The Chinese Communist Party is not technically the official government of China. Technically, that is the State Council. Although if you want to get into the real structures of it, the Chinese Communist Party still controls the State Council. But when it comes to international relations, they play it this way. And so this lawsuit is going to be interesting because based on current laws, unless they change them, which they are talking about doing, you can't sue, foreign governments for things like this. And it's murky. But the Chinese Communist Party is going to be put in a position where it either accepts the lawsuit because it is technically not the government of China, based on its own structures, or it's going to have to admit that the Chinese Communist Party is, in fact, the main governing body of China, and, of course, try to challenge this lawsuit based on that. Now, with that said, folks, again, we're continuing these broadcasts 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, so please remember to tune in. If you haven't already, please remember to like and subscribe. Again, we really need your support. And also, click the notification bell. You get alerts when new videos are up. And if you have questions for me, things you want to let me know, leave them in the comment section. I do read them. Now, folks, again, thanks. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time.